Feature stuff.
G'day, it's Nathan here from Things and Stuff. Welcome back. I'm constantly asked about matrix mould, so let's do a matrix mould. We're going to mould my little fella here. When we make copies, we'll be pouring in from the tail, so we want that at the top. This way the air rises up and away from the details you want to capture. Start by drawing a parting line halfway around your sculpture. You want to aim for the widest parts on the sides to draw your parting line. We will mould him in silicone facing up so the air bubbles rise up away from our details. You can use any old stuff laying around to help block out your clay walls. You will use less clay that way, but I'm an idiot and like to waste clay. Start building your clay wall. Depending on what your sculpture is made of, place something on the half you will squish into the clay. This will make cleanup easier and also protect your sculpture. Generally you want to use wet paper towels, but as this is a solid sculpture, I'm using masking tape. Apply the tape close to your line but don't go over it. Then position your sculpture into the clay and begin building up the clay to your parting line. Make sure you don't go over your line. Also make sure you have no undercuts. You don't want your two shell moulds locking together, so you have to imagine how they will part. If it looks like it will lift off without locking onto the other side, then you have it about right. Get the clay at a 90-degree angle to your sculpt as best you can, then proceed to smooth the surface. To smooth, gently caress the clay. Work it in your hands till it bends to each and every one of your desires. Whisper sweet nothings to it as you move your hands ever so gently down. Oops, sorry. Got a little carried away there. Just use tools, sponges and brushes to get the clay smooth. Then cover the top half of your sculpture in masking tape to protect it. Cut yourself some clay slabs to the thickness you want your silicone to be, and cut off sections to begin to cover your sculpt. You don't have to be perfect, just get it roughly covered. Then fill in any gaps you may have. Once done, grab a rake tool and begin to smooth it out. Then using sponges or even a wet cloth, start making the clay smooth again. Yeah baby. Oh, so smooth. Until you are satisfied. Then cut some strips of clay and place them at the point where your sculpture and clay wall meet. Continue this all the way around. Get that all smooth too. Ah yeah, smooth. Place a strip down the centre. See, right down the middle. Then build yourself some little bridges to join the strips. Just like that. These will act as registration keys. Basically, they will be the parts where our silicone sits all comfy in our outer jacket to keep it in place. Once you are happy with how your worm is coming along, make some keys to run around the outside part. These will also keep our silicone sitting in our jacket correctly. Make sure you get them all smooth, nice and clean and not lumpy. Jam in a toilet roll or some round cylinder shape to be your pour point. You want your pour point to be at the highest point of your mould. Now for this, I built a box mould and poured in the plaster because I'm lazy. But given the size, I don't recommend this method. Doing a plaster layout would have been way better. The mould would have been lighter, would have used less materials, and it would have made drilling air vents easier. But I'm a silly bugger and poured my plaster as a massive block mould. Once it was set, I removed the outer walls, then turned it over and cleaned off all the clay, except for the clay that will act as our dividing line. Basically, you want to leave the clay at our halfway point. Repeat the earlier step again on this half, cover in tape to protect it, and then cover in clay at the thickness you want your silicone jacket to be. When completed, you are ready to pour the second lot of plaster. Our block mould again. Don't do this. Please do a plaster layout for moulds this size. Ready to pour. Just make sure you release the plaster before you do. You don't want the plaster to stick to itself. So for this I brushed on a layer of Vaseline. Then it was safe to pour the second half. When it is all set, pry the two moulds apart and you should be left with something like this. This clay in the mould is a good way to gauge how much silicone you will need. Gather it all up and squish it into a cup. That's roughly how much silicone you need to fill the void. Always add a little more though to play it safe. Clean out the clay from your shell mould. You want to find all the points where air may get trapped and drill small holes to allow air to escape. Now smooth out your clay and then carve in some keys or registration points. This will help the two silicone moulds lock together correctly. Place your shell mould back on and make sure you use hot glue, or in this case some wet clay, to cover the areas where the silicone might escape and leak out. Because of the size, my bleeder holes had to come out the sides. I then used fish tank tubing to help them reach the top of the mould. Once the silicone is set, one half is done. Clean out the clay from the other side and drill your air vents. Drill holes in the areas where you think air will get trapped. He's ready to be drowned in silicone. First make sure you release the silicone with Vaseline so you can separate the moulds when done. Then put plaster moulds together again and seal the seam with hot glue or clay to begin pouring in the second half of silicone. Once you have poured your second half of silicone and it is all set, then gently pry apart your moulds. Get your sculpture out however you can. Sometimes they pop straight out, other times you have to completely destroy them. And then you have your two-part matrix mould. Just make sure you clean them thoroughly before using them to make your casting. And there it is, a quick rundown on how to make a matrix mould. If you would like to see a more in-depth video on the mould making process, then be sure to let me know in the comment section and I'll see what I can come up with. For now, make sure you stay tuned to Things and Stuff if you want to see more things and stuff. I'll see you in the next video.
Figs and stuff, I just like figs and stuff, yeah.